How is it already July already? I honestly don't even know. Like, time is going at a warp speed. This year is literally already halfway over, and I feel like we just got into 2025. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about my June wrap up, which I got through quite a few books in June, so let's just get into it. First up, Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And I've become a Emily Henry stan. I know, big shocker. But Emily, she can write a book. She can kill that. I read Beach Read in May and I was converted then. I loved that book. So I thought I'd give this one a shot and I was not disappointed. First off, let's just dive into the plot. So basically, it is a literary agent, or FMC. She goes on like this little vacation with her sister to try to reconnect, and they vacation in this small town that her oldest client's book, most popular book, is based off of. And while in this town, she runs into this editor that passed on that book, and he's her nemesis. So, you know, the tension. It was great.
Delicious.
The characters, I love them. The thing I gotta say about Emily Henry's books that she does not disappoint on is banter. The banter was so clever and just funny. I was laughing out loud multiple times through this book, and her characters always have such emotional depth that it just really pulls you in. There's no like problems with individuality with the characters, they have a lot of personality. And in this book, particularly, it deals with a lot of issues within family dynamics because the sisters, they are kind of codependent on each other. The FMC has had to take care of her sister since she was younger. They lost their mother kind of randomly, tragically, and so she had to step up and be that kind of mother figure for her sister. Because of that, she has this tendency to like always take care of her sister, even though her sister is a grown woman now, has her own family, has her own children, but she still has this itch to want to take care of her. And so it's just kind of breaking down that whole learned trait. So, yeah, it was interesting to see her navigate that. With the MMC, it's kind of the opposite for his family dynamics. It's they don't want to lean on him and he's trying to give them help. So it's interesting that they're kind of opposites and they do attract within their own boundaries. And it's fun to watch them break down those walls. And it was also interesting to kind of see or readjust my own perspective because there's a point in the book where the younger sister, is talking about her times with her mom and how they were not living the greatest because they were poor living in New York City. And so she was describing, the downsides and how things were going and her experiences with that. And while her older sister, the one who's been taking care of her for so long, remembered those same times completely differently, enjoying those times and really looking back with a smile instead of, with negative thoughts. So it was fun to see like different perspectives on the same circumstances. And yeah, I took that to heart because I could be enjoying my times and someone else next to me could be completely different feelings. So I thought that was interesting and a fun look at things to really grasp that you could be living the same life but completely different from someone else because perspectives, they really matter.
And don't you forget.
When I first started this journey into Emily Henry, people said that Book Lovers was boring. And I obviously disagree. But I think where people think it's boring is because of the slight pacing issue in the beginning. Whereas with fantasy books, You get a lot of world building. So that takes a while to get to the nitty-gritty of the story, and that's slower pacing. And I think that's the same thing for this book, except instead of world building, it's character building. So if you don't like character driven stories, you're not going to like this book. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I gave this book 5 stars. Next up, I have Catherine Center's Hello Stranger. And this book was fun. So it's about a portrait artist, and she has brain surgery. After the brain surgery, unbeknownst to her that this might occur, she loses her ability to discern faces. So she just can't see faces. She's got face blindness. And this happens weeks before her big break. Like, she's in a show and she's like a finalist out of like 2,000. She's like the top 10. And so she's basically out of luck because she can't do the one thing she's supposed to do as a portrait artist, is to paint a face. So that's basically the story, and I loved it.
Words cannot express my love for you.
Things I loved about this book is the uniqueness of it all. You don't really hear about the story, facial blindness anytime. So I thought this was a fun plot twist when it comes to a romance novel. And then the characters were done so well. The villains, the FMC stepsister in here is evil. And I hated her down to my very bones.
She's the worst.
And I think it's impressive when any writer can invoke such strong emotions into their readers. So I think she did a really good job with this one. Another thing I love is that there's so many messages, like good messages throughout the book that you can kind of pull between the lines. Like the FMC, she's lived with this MMC for a couple of years because they live in the same complex, the same building. And she's met him a few times, but she doesn't truly know him until she can't see his face. And it's honestly baffling in a way. I really enjoyed that kind of like sub message, I guess. So I really enjoyed that. And then not only that, I really like the idea that the author was putting out with superimposing your predisposed assumptions, which the FMC, she assumes a lot of things about the MMC just because she sees him. For example, he comes in and out of, other female residents' apartments. So she assumes that he's like a womanizer, a man who just loves getting the V. All right. And actually, no, that is not the case. But because of that, she has this idea in her head that he's a bad guy, and just things that she sees him do throughout. Like, he takes a phone call that is not great. It doesn't sound great if you have no context of the matter, but that just reaffirms that he's a bad guy. But she doesn't know him. And so once she like starts to actually hang out with him, she sees that he's actually not a bad guy. But because of all these assumptions, she thinks that this stranger, this strange man that she does not know anything about, is a bad guy because of all of the things that she sees without knowing. So I think it was a good thing to kind of step back and look at yourself in a way to really see, am I reaffirming my own supposed assumptions on something that I shouldn't be assuming. It's it's kind of crazy to think about, actually. So yeah, that's a Catherine Center was making me think, especially in like the author's note at the end of the book. She talks about how she got into romance writing, and how people tend to say that romance books are so predictable. And she said that romance books, sure, can be predictable, but she doesn't like that word. She likes to think them as hopeful. They're hopeful books. And I like that term because I feel like predictable has such a negative connotation when it comes to romance books. And I found it like a breath of fresh air for her to take it as a different spin, just a hopeful book. I believe she said, and I quote, tragedy is a given, joy is a choice. So, yes, we can go for like your next literary masterpiece, and, it's probably going to have some tragedy in there, not going to be wholeheartedly predictable, sure, but you're also not getting much joy out of that. With romance books, you're always expected to get some semblance of joy. So I like that take on romance writing. And personally, I think, sure, we all know the ending for the most part with romance books, but it's not about the ending, it's about the journey. It's about the plot between the beginning and the end of a romance book for me. Okay? But anyways, I really enjoyed this book. The only issue I really had were that the characters that were not great to the FMC didn't really get their like comeuppance. I needed some semblance of like revenge or something. I felt like they needed worse things. Especially the stepsister. I was so angry. I feel like the FMC deserved better, and I needed the villains to just hurt a lot harder. I needed there to be more apologies or um explanations. It felt like I didn't get enough closure. And so for that reason, I gave this book 4.75 stars. Next up, Not in Love by Ellie Hazelwood. And if you haven't read this book, I implore you to do so. And if you want to know what it's about, well, it's about this woman who is a biotech engineer, and she's really only interested in like one night stands. She really doesn't do relationships. So she goes to this app and she finds this guy and she messages him because he intrigues her. And they agree to meet up at a bar. Things go awry and they don't end up sleeping together. But he drops her off and she does something that she never does. She gives him her number and her name. And the next day, she hears that her company has been bought out by a biotech firm, and they're all worried for their jobs, whatever. And one of the founders is there to announce that they're buying the firm or they're buying the company. And who is it? Oh, it's her one night stand that didn't happen. And it kind of goes off from there. And I love this book. I love it so I love this book so much that I literally will accept no criticism. There are no cons in this book. Zero, zip, nada. I love this book wholeheartedly. And this was a reread for me. This is the second time I read it. And I thought maybe it'd be like a little boring because, you already know what's going to happen. This is the second time you've read it. But I found myself getting through these pages. I decided to listen to it on audio, and I was looking for things to do. I was cleaning things that didn't need to be cleaned because I was like, well, I need to keep doing things so I can keep listening. And I did. I did. And I finished it in like a day. It was so good. It was so good. So good. And honestly, all the pros, the characters, fantastic. And one thing I do love about this story is that usually it's like the man has a lot of baggage, and it's like the women fix him, whatever. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's usually the dude that has the issues and the woman ends up fixing him. And that's not a problem. That's not a bad thing. It's it happens a lot because it's an interesting plot line. But I love the dynamic switch because in this one, it's more like she has the most emotional baggage that she hasn't worked through, and he's like been to therapy. So he has all the tools to help her through it. So he's the one that's helping her through it. So I love that like switch up, that change in dynamic. And yeah, I just one thing one thing I have to say is the message in here uh was kind of like we love loyalty, but don't let loyalty blind you from the truth, because there is a character in here that could use a slap or two. But anyways, I love this book, so obviously I gave it 5 stars. Now you're like, why? Why did you read Not in Love? Well, there was a reason. You thought there wasn't a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason. The reason was I wanted to read Problematic Summer Romance by, you guessed it, Ellie Hazelwood, because it plays off the same characters from Not in Love. Not the same ones, not the same exact. We're not following the same couple. But we're following the MMC's sister and best friend from the Not in Love book. So I wanted to read about his sister and his best friend, and it's an age gap romance. And you know, I love an age gap romance. And the plot, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the characters from Not in Love, they're getting married. And the sister of the MMC, she's excited for him, but she's dreading it. She's dreading it because she has to see his best friend. And his best friend became like one of her closest confidants that no one knew about. But he cut her off in like all contact with her for like the last 10 months. And so she has to see him again in Italy because they're having a destination wedding. Very fancy. And I love the close proximity. It was eating me up. It was so good. Scrumdiddlyumptious.
All you can eat buffet.
One little tidbit I loved about this book is that this book was supposed to be a novella. But Allie Hazelwood was like, couldn't do it. She's like, they need the full story. And I love that. And you know what? Everything was just jump shotting off the page. It had me in a chokehold. I sat down to read this on a Saturday night. I finished it on Sunday morning. It was so good. I could not put it down. Just the characters are fun, and I loved that the whole thing with the FMC. She had issues with love because she lost it. Her parents died like one after the other, like months apart when she was like 13. And so she really has, like, yes, she has her brother, but she hasn't really felt love like that in a while. Very encompassing because she was very close with her parents. And then we have the MMC who really hasn't had love. His dad is anything but loving, and his brothers are very selfish, very takes after his father. He doesn't really know what love is. So it was fun to see them collide in that way. It was, like I said, just delicious.
I love it.
Yes, they have a large age gap. It is large. But I think I really love the story because overall it's just a light-hearted story about two characters that have an abundance of baggage on both ends. And they kind of level out with their own personal experiences, and I think their age gap kind of closes slightly with the baggage that they both have. And it's so intriguing to see him break down because the MMC, he's very mm, Jake Ryan-esque, like from 16 Candles. Like, I love Jake Ryan, okay? I love, what's that quote?
I want a serious girlfriend. Somebody I can love. That's gonna love me back.
That's the one. That's the one. I love Jake Ryan because of that quote. Because of that quote. And Connor says something similar. Like he really encompasses that quote in all of its glory. And of course, we get to see, you know, those same characters from the last book, Eli and Rue, the MMC and the FMC of Not in Love. And I didn't think I could love Eli more than I already did, but I do. I do. He's fantastic, and I love the relationship. So it was just fun to see those characters again in this new setting. I mean, Sicily, whoa. But another tidbit though, Ellie Hazelwood loves Sicily. She loves it. And I think it really came through in her writing how much she loves it because of all the aspects that she brought from Sicily that she's seen and experienced into this book, so everything felt more genuine. But I'm gonna stop here because I could go on and on and on. I gave this book 5 stars. obviously. All right, now let's get into these two books. The first book is The Witchwood Boys Did Me Dirty and The Arcane Taste of the Witchwood Boys by C.M. Stonick. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. I might be wrong. But I'm not going to give you the plot of these books because this is books 3 and 4 of the series, so I don't want to spoil anything. But whoo, man. Let's start with a light note. Let's give you some pros. I liked that we got to see a few more characters. We got to see their development slightly, and we got to see some new characters from the boys' past. And the ending was intense. I was on the edge of my seat. Now let's get into the bit of the cons. Now I love a good smutty book. I do. However, I love plot as well. So the balance was not there a lot of the times, and I feel like that was the main focus of the book was the sex. It was mostly just that. Because here's the thing, in this story, because very magical, they're witches. So they do a lot of magical spells, but a lot of their magical spells have a lot of smutty-esque things. Like they need a lot of bodily fluids to cast their spells. That's what I'm going to say on that. And yeah, it was hard to really get into it because I was like, again, like I know we need to do a spell, but again, like can't we do like something else? I was getting tired of it at this point because this is the third book in the series, and it's been a lot. It's been a lot. I was hoping, like, things would be amped up because we're the last two books in the series. We're getting into the ending. We're wrapping things up. So I was hoping things would change. No. So going back to watch my videos for this, I realized that my cons list for this book, The Witchwood Boys Did Me Dirty, kind of got cut short. So I think that might be for the best. One thing I will say is that in this book, I began to hate the characters because they were very selfish. Um, but the last 75 pages of this book kind of redeemed the book itself, which is why I gave it 3.75 stars. However, yeah, it was the ending was the best part of the entire book. And I was really hopeful that it would pave the way for the last book to be the best one out of the series. Well, let's get into the next one. Let's start with the cons here. The characters. The characters, they lost all individuality. The MMCs were all the same person at this point. They only really cared about the FMC's safety, and that's it. Like, none of their own personal goals or what they wanted for their futures or none of that. It was just like so single minded. And because of that, there was no distinguishing between them. And it was kind of hard to read, especially for the FMC, because she had like this whole thing where she loved like restoring old houses to like their previous glory. Like she loved painting. But like by this point, goals and aspirations who? She's not in the room with us because she did not care. She only cared about like her man's. That's it. That's it. And I'm like, that's a choice. That's a choice. But yeah, at this point I was just kind of with the characters. There was a point where like one of the MMCs, he is so hell-bent on getting back to his family, but then treats them kind of like, I don't know, like trash in a way. He doesn't really care. Like he cares, but he like doesn't show it. He's just very angry with them, and that reunion in itself is like only a few pages. I was like waiting to get this reunion because they were like kind of talking about it throughout the books, but then we get to it and it's I don't feel any closure. I don't get what I want. And then the characters themselves are just very selfish, like I said in the third book. The third book, they're kind of selfish because they have like no urgency and they're not really caring about other people. But then this book, it's like turned up to the max because a lot of innocent people are dying and they're just kind of like, I don't care. Like it's so hard to empathize with these characters. So it's in turn very hard to root for them. So at this point I was like, I don't even care about these characters anymore. But moving on to the plot, there's a lot of filler. Well, it could have been a lot shorter. This book is like 500 pages, and I could have lived with at least 200 less pages. It was a lot. I mean, the beginning was great. I was really enjoying myself. I was like, okay, this is going to be the best book of the series. I spoke too soon. It was probably the worst book of the series. Just because there was nothing that was giving me anything. Like, there was no backstory on the lore of this magical place they call the Witchwoods. Like, there's no lore, there's no origin story for like the villain of the story, which is the Hag Witch. So there was no backstory, there was no nothing. And even the magic was not explained. And at a certain point towards the end, magic feels like it just out the window. Like, what we've known up until this point, till the end, thrown out the window because um it doesn't even make sense. I'm not going to spoil anything, but the magic doesn't make sense and it's not explained at all. You just kind of have to deal with it. So, yeah, I was not enjoying myself. I guess the pros, I got to finish the story and get the end of the characters who I didn't really care about, but I was like, I like closure. It's why I don't DNF books very often, because I like to know what happens. Um, so yeah, I guess that would be a pro. And that I finished. That's a pro. I gave this book 2.5 stars, and I think that was generous. I did not like this book. So I read For the Fans by Nyla K, and what a book. I knew this book was popular because it just had such good ratings, and every time someone spoke about it, they had nothing but great things to say, which is why I put it on my TBR for the month of June since it was Pride Month. So I went into it, and the plot of the book, if you do not know, it's about these two stepbrothers who hate each other from moment one. Well, one of the stepbrothers hates the other one from moment one. The other one's like, all right, if you're going to keep acting like an asshole, then I'll have to match your level of assholery with my own. So from then they're at each other's throats. But anyways, I digress. So these two stepbrothers hate each other. They're going to the same college, and something happens to where they don't have the funds to continue their education in college or even to stay on campus. One of them has like a football scholarship and it covers everything except for his dorm, and he wants to stay with his football buddies, so he has to find a way to make some fast cash. The other one doesn't really have money. He doesn't really have a lot of like backing except his mother's husband, which, like I said, something happens to the point where they don't have that option anymore. So they both need fast cash in order to stay where they are. And one of them has the idea of making an OnlyFans account. And the other stepbrother kind of gets strapped into that as well because he needs the fast cash. So they end up doing it together. And things get real spicy. But I really love this book because it was just interesting to see the dynamic unfold between the two characters. The yearning and the growing tension was so natural, and it just felt like I was reading about a relationship that was happening in real time, you know? Like, it wasn't just immediately they were into each other. It was like the growing love and the denial of feelings. I felt all of that. And so I really enjoyed that area of the book. What I really love about these two characters are the fact that they're so opposite. Like, and we know the saying, opposites attract, but in this instance, they're very much on different sides of the spectrum. We have your quarterback, superstar, college athlete who's destined to be in the NFL. And then we have this very artsy stoner who doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life. He's just kind of like living day by day, doesn't have like the best grades. Like he's just kind of like puttering through life. Those are the two MMCs. They're very different people, but they work. They work. And I loved seeing that love bloom and grow. Now, I do have a few cons about this book. I did love the essential story, but the side characters I don't feel were developed enough, and the fact that their personalities could change on a dime. That really irked me. And the fact that the closure, there was a lot of open endings. There was closure in a way, but I had still a lot of questions that needed to be answered. And some of the, I guess, plot points just didn't make sense to me. Like there's a point when things hit the fan and the person who rats them out is kind of revealed, or like they have assumptions of who it was, but I would have liked to know for certain who the culprit was, and I just didn't get that. And then the ending is kind of open. Like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the way things are wrapped up isn't like in a pretty bow. There's still questions around the future of the quarterback character. So for that, I just it that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And most importantly, towards the end, things started getting a little cringy. The dialogue was rubbing me the wrong way. The dialogue was getting a little cringy and a lot repetitive, to the point where I was getting a little bored. So for those reasons, I gave this book 4 stars. But like I said, essentially, I loved the plot and I loved the two MMCs. It was just a little rough with the rest of it. Next up, I have The Pairing by Casey McKiston, and this book is about a queer couple. They are exes. They were friends, became lovers, and then they broke up and they haven't seen each other in about 4 years. But they both end up on the same wine and food tour around Europe. And that's kind of where their story takes off. So let's just get into the problems. I had a lot of problems with this book. I wanted to love it, but 80% of this book was just the wine and food tour. Like, I felt like I was taking the tour. I mean, I'm all for description and setting the scene, but the scene was set up too much. I got descriptions of like the paintings and all of the art. I felt like I was on an art history tour, and all of the descriptions of the wines. I'm like, I love this, and I know that one of the characters is a sommelier or is training to become one, but like I didn't need all of this. I needed just the characters, the two main characters and their story. I would have loved some maybe flashbacks of their lives together, which I did get a few. I did.
Just calm down.
But I felt like there could have been more. I got too much of the food and wine tour to be into the story as a whole. Another problem I had with this book is the miscommunication trope. I hate with my very soul the miscommunication trope.
Maybe nothing is worse than this.
I wish it never existed, but it does. But sometimes authors are pretty good with, well, sometimes authors can be good at incorporating the miscommunication trope into a story. And that's usually because the miscommunication trope is not the driving force of the plot. But in this case, it is. And that's what really made me angry because if they would just have more conversations, open and honest conversations, things would have progressed a lot faster. And then speaking of progression, the pacing was atrocious. I was bored. I was bored a lot of the times, and I like to blame that on the setup of this book. Instead of chapters, we have like the countries that they visit. So they're going to like Rome and Naples, and that's the start of each chapter. But those chapters are so long. So it it feels slower than maybe it is, but oh my gosh, was it slow. It was painful. It was painfully slow.
I feel like I aged 4 years in there.
One of maybe my biggest pet peeves about this book is, and this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to know, please scrub the video along. But one of the bigger issues is that one of the characters, um, their name is Theo, and they come out to their once friend, ex partner, Kit, as non binary. And I don't like the thought of coming out, especially with something like being non binary. I think that's just who you are. So, like, this is my own personal thing. I don't like the idea of coming out because it's just who you are. I don't think there should be a whole shebang about you're dating the same sex or whatever, what have you. I think it's just like you start dating that same sex and I'm like, cool. Like that's my thought process. But taking that away, both characters are bisexual. That's cool. Love that. Um, I just didn't understand why we put so much on being non-binary because again, it's just who you are and that's how you see yourself and that's how you want other people to see you as well as non-binary. And I think it's just like a hey, my pronouns are they them. I don't think it should be a big shebang, but like it was like this whole thing. I just I don't know, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And now you're like, well, were there any pros? Yes. Yes, there were. One pro I would like to say is that all of the characters were very well developed. They were very well thought out. Their characters were fully rounded. And that's great because not not a lot of, well, authors do struggle sometimes with, the details and fully developing their characters, but this author had no issue with that, but that's also because they were fully developing everything, including the wine and food tour. Again, felt like I was on this tour. But that's really all of my pros for this book, unfortunately. So I gave this book 2.5 stars. And honestly, I think that's generous because I really did not enjoy this book. So this next book has been all over TikTok because it is a dark romance that is also a hockey book. And I've never heard of such a thing. So I was very intrigued. And that book is The Wrong Pucking Number by C.R. Jane. Now, the plot. The plot of this book is this man who's like a big shot hockey player. He texts someone thinking it is someone his father needs him to be set up with. And it's this girl, actually, who's had a rough life, was an orphan, has been on her own for a little bit. She's 19, so she hasn't been on her own for a while, but she's had a lot of terrible times through her life. But she gets this text from this guy, and they talk for a little bit. He's trying to figure out who he's actually talking to. She sends him a picture of herself, and he's been caught. Man is obsessed. From the moment he sees a picture of her, he's basically her stalker.
Yes, I am. I absolutely am obsessed with you.
And that is the plot of the book. Now, one thing I will say I did like about this book is it's very fast paced. The chapters are short and things are happening at warp speed. But that is not really a good thing in this case. Here are the reasons why. There was no plot. There was no plot. It was just this man and this girl have insta lust, not even insta love. And I don't really like insta love. I like there to be a slow burn. So that already made me mad, is the insta lust. But you know what? Sometimes insta lust is fine as long as there's other things going on within the book. Now, there were not. There were a lot of conflicts that I really wouldn't constitute as conflicts, just like things that just kind of came up and they didn't really delve deeper into it, and things were fine. Like everything worked out relatively quickly. And none of the characters, like the side characters, were well developed, and not even the main characters were well developed. They were pretty shallow. I didn't really have a connection to either of the characters. It was honestly a little hard to get through. And when I say hard to get through, I mean hard to read. Not necessarily to get through. I finished it in a couple of days because it was fast paced, but I wasn't enjoying myself. And another thing I really disliked about this book is the MMC. I love, I love a possessive MMC, but I only love him to a point. If that MMC is trying to take away the FMC's on autonomy in any way, shape, or form without her consent, it's not it. This man went behind her back. And this is a spoiler if you don't want to know. This is a spoiler. He got her fired from her job, got her evicted from her apartment. So really all she had was him. She could only lean on him. And then he let her believe these things happen just out of the blue. Like, I was so mad. And then when he gets caught, when she finds out about this, she's obviously angry. She wants to leave. But no, he doesn't let that happen. He drugs her and chains her to her bed until she agrees that, yeah, I'm in love with him. So basically, for real, Stockholm syndroming her. Yeah. I didn't understand the hype with this one. I love a possessive man, but that was too much. There has to be a line, and that was it. We've crossed it. And I just, like I said, was not having a good time. So yeah. I believe I gave this book, I want to say 2.5 stars, but I could be wrong. Let me, I'm shocked with myself. I gave it 3 stars. And I think that's only because of how fast paced it was. I love a good fast paced book, but man, honestly, I might need to change that because I really that was a few days ago. Maybe I should readjust and after some time, letting it settle, it might have to be a 2.5 book, if not a 2.25 star book, because I quite literally did not have a good time. Not a good time. I don't think I will be continuing with this series, even though it's so hyped up. Again, don't understand why, if that was the case, but if these are the type of MMCs she's writing, I can't get behind it. So I might give her one more shot in the next book in the series, but if it's going in the direction of the same MMC from the first book, I'm tapping out. But anyways, if you read it and enjoy it, all the power to you. That's just not my bag. Next up, I have Time to Shine by Rachel Reed. And this book is about a minor league goalie who gets called up to the NHL words. And he's only really replacing one of their injured goalies for a few months while they recuperate. But in this time, he gets really close to one of the other players living with him, and that's kind of where it goes. That's basically the whole plot is him getting close with this other player on the team. And I gotta say, this is going to be a quick review because this has never happened to me. I've seen other people have the same type of review of like different books, and I never understood how, but I completely understood it with this book. This book was just fine. I didn't have any things I hated, I didn't have any things I loved. It was just kind of average to me. So if you're looking for like a quick, light hockey read that is an romance, this might be the one for you, because it was good. Some people might rate it great. I'm not one of those people. I just thought it was good. Take that with what you will. I gave this book 4 stars. Next up is a book that I've been pushing off for quite some time, and I decided to finally start it this month, and I was kind of disappointed. And that book is The Push by Ashley O'Drain. And this is a thriller. It's about a mother who is in a great relationship. She, like, her and her partner are fantastic until they have a kid. And this kid, her daughter, is showing signs of just to be honest, like serial killer behavior. She's not getting close with her daughter at all, and that's building kind of some resentment between her and her partner throughout the years, and that's basically it. That is the plot of this book. Now, I'm going to start with the pros here. I thought the story was thought provoking. If you're not a mother, it really puts you in the place of being a mom and all of those thoughts and feelings that go through you. And I felt like I was living her grief um, when things happen tragically. But yeah, that's all of my pros. So maybe my biggest pet peeve were the generational stories in this book because we follow the main character and then also get stories of her mother and then get stories of her mother's mother, so her grandmother. And I didn't feel like the grandmother story was really necessary for the continuation of the story. I mean, I guess you could say the mother's story played a part in the main character story, and that's just because of how she grew up and how she wanted to be a mother. But yeah, I didn't think the generational take was something that needed to be done in this book. It just didn't make any sense to me. Next, I have all of the characters under my kill list. I hated all of them. I hated all of them. There wasn't a character I actually liked. Not at all. They all they all kind of gaslit the FMC the entire time. The entire time. And it made me so mad because they were ignoring blatant blatant signs of the daughter. I was like, I don't care if she is your child. These are signs and you're missing all of them. Like they kept making excuses and I was like, why are you gaslighting this mom so hard? It didn't make any sense. And then even the mom, like I admired her perseverance for this relationship with her daughter, but by the end, I was like, I don't even know why you're still wanting this. Like granted, I am not a mother myself, so I can't really say how it feels to be a mom and being put in that place, but ooh, I was angry. I was angry. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the ending. I'm not going to spoil anything, but what I will say is that you don't really get closure. It's kind of open-ended, and as a girl who really loves closure, it didn't hit its mark with me. I didn't really enjoy myself the entirety of the book, but then to also not get closure on what happens with this daughter, I I about threw the book across the room. I was so mad. So mad. All that, I gave this book 3.25 stars. I could have gone lower, but like I said, it was thought provoking, so it did give me something, just not enough. Next up, let's talk about Kiss the Villain by Rena Kent. And this book I've been waiting for a little bit now, because it's kind of like a continuation of like the Legacy of God series. And it's following another character from that series, but in its own series, kind of gets a little confusing. But this one follows the brother of the MMC in like the first book of that series. And he is very controlled. He's kind of a misunderstood character. We've only really seen him as kind of like a goody two shoes, but inside, that's not who he is. So he's kind of like the man with the plan. So he is getting back at one of their rivals. He has some insidious plans going on, but before he can do those plans, he is intercepted by this like dark, brutal, mysterious man, and this man is not so kind to him, and let's just say things take a very intense turn. So after this kind of interaction, the MMC is seething. He's seething, and he wants to get back at this man. He just doesn't know who he is yet, but he's plotting. He's plotting, and he goes to class Monday and is introduced to his new law professor. Guesses on who might that be?
You'll never guess.
You guessed it. It was the guy who did some not so nice things to him. So that is the story. That is the plot. Now let's get into the pros and the cons. Now, like I said, this book is kind of like a spin-off of the Legacy of God series. And so we get a lot of cameos from that series, and I loved that series a lot. So I love seeing all of those characters come back and kind of get like the insight, because this book takes place during like the entire series. Honestly, you could probably do like a tandem read between all of the books, like all 6 books in that series and this one, because they're all kind of happening at the same time. So it was kind of fun to see all of those things and see the things in the past books come up again, and knowing what's going on in those scenes that were kind of just getting alluding to alluded to allude we're getting a lot of just like things are happening between them, don't know what's happening, but we do if we've read that series. So that was really fun to see. And Garrett's character, he is, like I said, misunderstood, and you have this perception of him in like the first series, but in this one you get a completely different side of him, and I loved seeing that different side. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And last but not least, I really loved the dark vibes. I don't know what that says about me, but this dark, dark, dark romance is very much my cup of tea. I was living for it. So yeah, I love the vibes. But this was the first book I've ever read with the feminization kink. I think I'm saying that right. And I was not a fan. I was not a fan. Just the language of it all really threw me out of the story. And if that's your thing, that's your thing. But it was not mine. It was not mine. And I didn't know, like, I read the triggers, and that was one of the triggers in the trigger warnings in the beginning of the book. And I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared for that kink. I didn't really know much of it. So reading it really threw me off. So yeah, I wasn't vibing with that. And then Garrett's character kind of gets lost. he kind of just loses all individuality from like the beginning of the series. Honestly, like we see him as a character in like the other series, and we think of him as one certain way, but once we see him in this new light, we're like, okay, this is who he is. He's very much about control, and that's how he's introduced in this story, but we kind of lose all of that in his relationship with Caden. Like, I don't know, I felt like everything was lost about him in regards to this relationship. Like, he was no longer in control. He lost all critical thinking when it came to this man, and I couldn't really believe it in a way. Like, I was like, this does not make that, like, the math was not mathing for me. So because of those things, I gave this book 3.75 stars. Next up, I read probably one of the best summer reads you can read this summer, which is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. And this book, if you don't know, follows a man who is basically cursed. Every girl he's ever dated, when they break up, well, she finds her soulmate right after. And it's becoming a real issue for him. And he posted about it on like this Reddit post, and every woman is like, "Yes, let me date you so I can find my soulmate." But one of the women who sees this Reddit post is also having the same issue where she's dating a man, and once they break up, he literally finds his soulmate. And so the guy decides to like make a bargain with her. Maybe they should date for the summer and see if they can break their own curse, to see if once they break up, they'll find their own soulmates. So that's the story, and I was living for it. First off, I want to say the dialogue had me cackling. I was dying, rolling on the floor. It was so funny. I highlighted so many sections, so many sections. It was just so good. The banter between the MMC, the FMC, the FMC's best friend, like all of it was great. And then the story was just done so well. Like, the trauma was realistic, and the way you would excuse certain bad behavior, it was very much like, I've seen that before. Um, and you do tend to make excuses for people's bad behavior who you care about dearly, even though the red flags, they're waving. So yeah, it was just done so well, and the story unraveled so organically. And the MMC, oh my gosh, he was literal perfection. Literal perfection. I was like, where do I find him? Where do I find a Justin in my life? He was absolute perfection. I don't think I've ever read an MMC that I loved more. He was so cute, and he did so many fun things that I wish I saw more in the dating world, to be honest. So like, any man who watches this video or comes across this video or literally comes across this book, anything, take note, because this man was doing it right. But anyways, I gave this book 5 stars. I had no cons for this book. I enjoyed every second of it, and in fact, I was upset with myself for not starting it sooner. So there's that. This last book, I'm going to just give you the bare minimum because I don't feel like it deserves to be promoted in any way, shape, or form. Um, so the last book I read was The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. And first off, besides the, horrific inspiration of it all, the story itself was not very good. I didn't enjoy myself because, I mean, first off, the MMCs, I guess the MMCs have no chemistry. So it just felt very forced. The story had no conflicts, so there was nothing driving the plot. So it was kind of boring. Things that happened, you knew were going to happen. And I love romance, and it can be very predictable. But this one, I it was like no thought was being had. It was just like I saw all of the plot points, and everything happened as it should. and I was like, there's nothing to surprise me at all. And so, yeah, it was just all very predictable. And then just getting into the horrific inspiration, TJ Klune picked up inspiration from the 60s Scoop, which is a horrible moment in Canadian history where Indigenous families were being pulled apart and their children were being snatched from them, putting them in like orphanages and basically being adopted into like middle class white families. So yeah, I don't know how you pull from that and make it into like a whimsical fantasy type found family story. That's not what you should do. And so because of all of that, I give this book 1 star. Uh, was not my cup of tea. Um, yeah, I didn't enjoy myself. So yeah. All right, guys. Those were all of the books that I read for the month of June. And what a month. So in total, I read 14 books. And of those 14, I read on my Kindle 6 books. Physically, I read 1, and audibly, I read 7. So a solid month, I think. And then my favorite books of the month of June, I usually like to do this maybe like do one favorite book, but I really couldn't choose between the two. So I really loved Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez and Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. I could not choose. They were so good. And if you haven't read them, please do. But as far as July goes, I think my book that I would be the most excited to read for the month of July that's on my July TBR would be Binding 13, I believe, by Chloe Walsh. I have heard so many things about this book, and I know it's going to tear me apart because everyone and their mom is like crying over this book. And I'm not an emotional person when it comes to reading. So if someone's like crying for like something small or something, I'm probably going to bawl my eyes out. So yeah, but I'm excited because I love feeling such intense emotions when it comes to books and the characters in them. So yeah, that's gonna be the one I'm most anticipated for. Um, most anticipating. Yeah. Anyways, guys, that is all. I hope you guys had a great reading month for the month of June. Let me know what your favorite book was for the month of June and maybe one that you didn't like so much for the month of June. And you know what? While we're at it, tell me what you're most anticipating for the month of July. Anyways, that's it, guys. I love you all. Have a great July, and until next time, read on, my bookish friends.